Well, we're going to go ahead and get started here, guys. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping up front. First of all, this is the Power, Promise, and Practice of Mentoring with Man in the Mirror. If you came here looking for, car repair videos or a guide to cryptocurrency, trust me, you don't want to talk to any of us. But we would love to talk to you about being a mentor. Actually, I don't know. I might have just disparaged Michael, your cryptocurrency expertise, but I'm just guessing that you got enough to worry about without that. Joining me tonight, I'm Brett Clemmer, the president of Man in the Mirror, and joining me tonight or this morning, if you're in Asia, I know we've got some guys from Asia on. Guys, great to see you. Is first of all, Pastor Michael Aitchison. Michael is a pastor here in Orlando of Christ United Fellowship. He's also the co-host of a podcast called As in Heaven, which is a fantastic podcast that I love to listen to. He's from Miami. He is a proud, I would guess, a proud graduate of University of Kentucky. Is your football team still undefeated? Oh,
I'm a proud but non-gloating alum of University of Kentucky.
Look, Kentucky football's been terrible for so long. Michael, you get a little gloat right now.
Don't say that. He played for Kentucky.
Oh, my word. I just want you to know I left the program in better shape than when I arrived.
Well, that wasn't hard.
Knocked off a top 10 Clemson on my way out.
Win. Nice. So and Michael's married to Lucy. Their family life, Weekend to Remember speakers, and then Michael and Lucy have 4 daughters. So that's an amazing blessing. I know. Also joining us is Jeremy Shirky. Jeremy is the director of Mirror Labs, which is the division of Man in the Mirror that's our R&D division, really focused on how the church can reach men in their 20s and 30s more effectively. Especially right now anyway, with sort of a focus on the de-churched. Jeremy's got a storied past. Wait, that might not sound good. Jeremy's got a rich past. He's a graduate of University of Central Florida here in Orlando, has been a missionary in Haiti as well as a pastor in Jacksonville. So those are our panelists for this evening as we talk about the power, promise, and practice of mentoring. Now, a couple housekeeping things. At the bottom of your screen, guys, you're going to see two buttons, among others, but one says Q&A and one says chat. So please use the chat if you have a technical problem or something that needs to come into us as the panelists. We'll be able to see that. But if you have a question, we're going to save some time at the end for Q&A time. And so if you have a question that you'd like either Jeremy or Michael or one of the rest of us to answer, put that in the Q&A section, and then we'll keep monitoring that Q&A, and we'll ask as many of those questions as we can. Want to note that in our chat, we're already seeing guys from on the other side of the world. So great to see someone on from Shenzhen. That's awesome. I've actually been there, believe it or not. So love that part of the world, and we're glad to have you. So guys, our topic tonight is mentoring. And so maybe we could just start. I think that's a word that might not mean the same thing to everybody. So if I were to ask you to sort of define mentoring as you see it, what's a sort of a quick and easy definition that you give of that? Michael, I'll throw that one to you.
Okay, I'm a pastor, so I work in, and I'm a Presbyterian pastor, so I work in threes. So what I want to do is just sort of simplify it as proximate relationship plus dialogue plus time equals mentoring. Close relationship plus two-way conversation plus time equals mentoring. And so when you got guys together who are engaged in what some would call life-on-life discipleship, and there's sincere vulnerability, there's impartation of wisdom, there's exchange of ideas over a period of time, I think that is a great recipe for healthy mentoring, a mentoring relationship.
That's fantastic. So I'm just gonna repeat those three things because that's pretty powerful. Proximate relationship, so close interpersonal relationship, dialogue, two-way communication, and what was the third one?
Time.
So time, let me throw that one to you, Jeremy. So when Michael says mentoring takes time, like what is that? How do you react to that, or what do you think that means for a good relationship?
Yeah, I mean, time's relative, right? I think the best type of mentoring has no time cap, and it's a ongoing, ever-going endeavor. So I know, like Mike said, he's Presbyterian, and so he likes things kind of structured. I actually like mentoring unstructured and open-ended, and I can say that because I know Mike, he's a good friend. But I think there's a beginning, an obvious beginning, and there's not an obvious end to mentoring because there's really no arrival in a lot of ways. So I like to think of it in the sense of you're someone I actually want to do life with. When you say life on life discipleship, I think that's correct. Life on life activities, and yeah, there's no end in sight. So that's what I would say to that.
So would you say that there could be situations where I think of this in like a business setting where you like, I know there's some large corporations that actually have like intentional mentoring programs.
Sure.
Where you're sort of engaging with a person who's farther ahead of you in their career than you are, but that might have a specific time.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, there is in ways, I mean, I don't mean to say that that's all mentoring, right? But I think the most effective is long-term, substantial time to help men become the people they're supposed to be, the men they're supposed to be. And so to Mike's point, you have to be close in proximity, and it's a two-way dialogue street. So I just want to say, yeah, I agree with Mike. I think one thing I would add to that too, Oxford Dictionary, have you heard of that, Brett?
Oh no.
They say, mentoring, it means to advise and train.
Yeah.
That's like their terminology. And someone specifically, especially someone younger. And they put that caveat, which I think is important, because to me, mentoring is a gap in age where someone with more life experience and knowledge and wisdom, collected wisdom, can pass on to someone younger. And to me, when it says, what does mentoring mean to me? There is a gap in age where a elder gives their wisdom to me. So I just want to throw that caveat in there.
Great. Well, the title of this is Power, Promise, and Practice. We're going to talk about practices, and that's probably what a lot of guys are here to learn a little bit more about is practices. But let's talk real quick, like what is the power of mentoring? Like what do you think is accomplished in mentoring that's sort of unique to that kind of a relationship, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, the power is to transform a life. I mean, there is no greater power than to help someone else transform their life. And through the correction and care of a mentor, someone will be helped to unlock their God-given potential to become who God created them to be. And that's not a solo endeavor. You can't do that by yourself. So the power is through relationship with someone else. You can become all that God created you to be in a way that you can't do by yourself.
That's great. What about the promise, Mike? What do you think the promise of mentoring is? What are some of the benefits of it?
Just because I want to mess with my good brother over there, who hasn't called me in a long time, so I'm going to be passive aggressive on our panel tonight.
Homestead. I've been driving through a tunnel for 3 weeks.
No, I'm messing around. Okay, so again, I'm going to distill it to 3 things that I found helpful. Okay, so I think about mentoring. Mentoring promises community, and we can unpack what that means. Mentor promises actually 4 things. I'm going to stretch it to a 4th: security, dignity, and identity. So we think about community. You're not doing life by yourself. Somebody is with you. Somebody has essentially decided to raise you up, okay? And you'll notice that the themes behind this are fathering, parenting, discipling, coaching, guiding, all those things are in the background. Someone has decided to raise you up, do life with you, and watch you go off. Mm-hmm. So that's community. They're with you. And so I agree with Jeremy in terms of the long-term sustained impact of mentoring as it relates to time, okay? You've got security. The Bible says there's wisdom or safety in the counsel of many. So there is security in having someone invest in you that may have taken a few more steps than you have, that may have stepped off a few cliffs, that may have had a bunch of blunders that can prevent you from having the same experience. Now, we're all going to experience pain in this world. We live in a broken world, it's a fallen world. So there's no way to avoid pain, but there is an unwise and unhelpful way to go headlong into unnecessary pain. Mentoring helps provide that security, just from a pure practical life standpoint. It helps provide emotional security, okay? You understand you're not by yourself. That makes you more secure. Again, these sound like things that are basic to a parent and child relationship. And mentoring has that impact no matter what age or stage a person is in. Dignity. Man, how sweet is it to have someone say that you matter? We all have had, hopefully, experiences where someone has looked at us and taken a certain interest in us. And that changes our mental state of being, our emotional. It moves us to action when people help dignify us, humanize us, and help us understand that we are somebody and we do matter. And then the last thing I would say is identity. I'm sure there's some other things, but I think those are 4 big guns. All things that are important to men. I think these are things that are important to women as well. But identity, when we are as creatures, all right, always under somebody's authority, whether we want to accept it or not, we're under someone's authority. A friend told me that when I was in seminary, said, my dad told me you're always a man under authority, no matter how much power you have, because God created us. There's always going to be a creator-creature distinction. And I think mentoring helps remind us of that in the healthiest of ways, that there's always someone over us. We're always under somebody's authority. So community, security, dignity, and identity.
Can I add something to that, Mike?
And I think I left the identity part a little vague, but it reminds you that, okay, so being under authority, all right, you are a son, and then one day you will be a father. So that's where the identity, specifically the identity component comes. Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, to the good Reverend's point, I wanted to add that I also think a promise in it is, especially in Christian mentoring, is we get to be with Jesus. Mm. And I was looking at this the other day, but in the Great Commission, I'm sure everyone on this call has read it like 100 times. And we all know what it is. Go forth, make disciples, baptize them in the Holy Spirit, and the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe everything I command you. But I missed this last line, which is the promise of, and remember, I'm with you always to the end of the age. Mm-hmm. And it's a good promise for me, mentoring someone else, knowing that when I'm doing it, I'm not doing it as an obedient follower. I'm doing it as a son who has relationship with God in the midst of it, because he's with us when we're doing it. So it just is, I don't know, a helpful promise to know that we can be in the presence of God while doing his work.
Mm-hmm.
That's very profound. I love that. I love that you're pointing to the ending of that passage, Jerry. And it reminds me, Michael, what you said as far as identity being under authority, because that passage starts with, all authority has been given to me, so he didn't take it, it was given to him. And it's under that authority that we operate, as we're making disciples, as we're bringing people to faith, as we're teaching them and mentoring them and being in the presence of Jesus with them. So a nice full circle there. That's fantastic. Well, Jeremy, you have a statement that I've heard you make several times about elderly elders. And so when you think about a mentor, and you've also you've used that word already at least once, you think of it as an elder and somebody who's younger. So could you just say what you mean when you say elderly elders? What do you mean by that? And how does that relate to a mentor?
Yeah, I just want to say, someone just said there's an echo. Is it when I speak? I don't know who that was. I just want to make sure that's clear, if everyone can hear it.
I'll mute myself.
So an elderly elder is great, is a longing that I have and that I desire for my own life. A lot of times growing up in the Christian faith, when I hear about mentoring, I hear about, co-mentoring, group mentoring, and all these other conversations that we do it collectively. And at the heart of it, I don't hear a lot of like older men, old men of the faith taking young men of the faith under their wing and raising them up and mentoring them. So when I say elderly elder, it's to engage the men who are older than me to become the men that they're supposed to be, and that the whole paradigm of the church is built on generations of discipleship and mentoring, and it's passed down from one generation to the next. And there's been breaks in that. And when I was an associate pastor in Jacksonville, we would always kind of ask the question, where are the elderly elders? And there's a lot of church plants where there's a lot of young people at it, and there's a lot of churches been around a long time to have a lot of old people around it, and not a lot of young people. And so there seems to be this like kind of segmented grouping inside the church. So to me, the question becomes like, how do we connect to our elderly elders? And in most churches, they say that the pastor, however old the pastor is, the congregation reflects his age, 10 years older and 10 years younger of that age. And so, that seems to be true. But it's just a call to my elders, literally my elders in age, to become elders to me and tend to me and care for me and other guys my age too. You're on mute, Brett.
Sorry, trying to kill that echo. So this is a great question, Mike, for you. You're a senior pastor of a local church, so how does, is there an experience that you've had being mentored that has been particularly impactful for you in your life? And you're muted too. Yeah.
Actually, I've had, and I really liked what Jeremy was pointing out there. I am really big on, especially as one who appreciates the idea of covenant, especially as we see it in the Bible. Mm-hmm. I think that you have these generational movements. We've got the patriarchs, all right? We've got Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the children of Israel, first generation, second generation. You hear all this familial talk and what we call in fancy terms dynastic disposition, the continuation of the covenant or the continuation of this relationship or arrangement. And I love seeing older people in church. I was kind of one of those people born in the wrong time, born with an old soul, my wife and I. A lot of my good friends are older than me by years, and I love it. they bear the testimony of a faithful God.
Mm.
Right. When I was back in Miami growing up, I got this email about a young lady who stood up at this gathering at her church, and she started singing Amazing Grace. And she had a beautiful, beautiful voice. It just stirred the place full of soul. But then there came an older lady, maybe in her 80s, 90s, leather hands, gray hair, uh, you know, skin wrinkled and body a bit frail. And she stood up to sing the same song. And there wasn't a dry eye. There wasn't a person in their seat. There wasn't a person on their feet by the time she got done. It all fallen out because that lady's life, that lady's entire life, her testimony, her walk with God was brought to bear on that song. Not that the other young lady didn't have a firm walk, but there's something about the elders, the aged people that in God's kindness remind us that you'll make it, that I'm with you. You know, I think of Psalm 78, recount the wonderful deeds of the Lord and tell the coming generations. When I'm around people who have been walking with Jesus longer than I've been alive, they don't have to say anything else about God's faithfulness. I get it. I look at them and I say, yes, God is faithful. Okay. And I've had a number of those people in my life dating back to high school. Okay. I think of, and men and women, but for the sake of our conversation here, as far as men's roles, I think of men like Gifford Ramsey. He was a state trooper. Gifford Ramsey could dine with the governor and the guy on the street corner in the same night and at the same table and make both of them feel equally important. By the time he was done, you wouldn't know who was the man on the street corner and who was the governor. Okay. So men like that poured into me, that made me feel valued, and that taught me to value all people. And what they did, Brett, was simply pull me in. He took me places with him. He took me to radio interviews. He invited me to his house. He took us out. And I'm thinking back to how much money he must have been spending on us youngsters, because I mean, that was in one of my major growth spurts. I mean, we were ordering 50 wings at a time for our group. Not 50 wings for the evening, 50 wings at a time. And I would look at him and Neil, and they would look at the receipt and like kind of break it up. And I'm like, I look back and these men were investing in us in ways that I could only understand and fully appreciate as an adult. He was also one of my coaches and spiritual leaders of the team. And I got a penalty of the 15-yard kind. And he warned me about, you know, certain responses and all that. A guy stepped on me while I was on the ground, and I just reacted. Yeah, I would leave it to your imagination, you know, how I reacted. He was standing, I was on the ground, okay? And so the referee caught it, and I got a 15-yard penalty. And who did I hear yelling from the sideline with his high soprano voice? Mike, I told you, the devil out here too. The devil out here on the football field. And so I just hear Gifford Ramsey's voice reverberating in my mind constantly. And I mean, there's a litany of stories, but that's just to give you a small window into my mentor experiences. And that dates back to high school.
That's great.
Oh.
Jeremy, how about you? Have you had an experience with a mentor that's been particularly impactful for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think of two mainly. In high school, there was a guy named Wink who kind of became my spiritual father of sorts. And there was nothing particularly outstanding about him. The thing that stood out about him amongst all the other dads was that every other dad spoke down to me, and he spoke level with me and invited me into like like Mike was saying, like dignity, which honestly I didn't have a lot of dignity back then. But and he showed me what hospitality was, kind of like Mike. He said, hey, if you're ever around here, if you ever need a place to stay, if you're ever in trouble, here's the garage code. Just come in, we'll cook you breakfast, sleep wherever you can. And I did it multiple times. I'd stumble in there, God knows when, like 3 a.m. and hear the, garage door go up, and I'd pop in the back door, and he'd just say, all right, you all right, bud? And I'd say, yep, just go to sleep, fall asleep. I'd wake up, him and his wife would cook me this massive breakfast, undeservedly. It doesn't even make sense still. But I mean, really, in that way, they would ask, they're like, well, what were you doing last night? And not in this way of like, hey, we're going to change your ways and you're going to get right, but just inviting me more into relationship, into sonship, and in a way, prepping me to know what God the Father is like. And the other one was a guy named Chuck.
Hey, Jeremy, before you
Yeah.
go to, I want to tease a little bit of the story out. When did you become a believer in Jesus? When did you start following Christ?
College.
So this was in high school.
Starting from 8th grade, honestly.
So I think this is a great point that that you don't have to like find some guy that's like on his way spiritually before you're ready to invest your life in him. That God's going to call you to invest your life in someone regardless of where they are spiritually. And so would you guys agree with that? Just, you have to listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit saying, this is a guy that you need to invest your life in, regardless of whether he's obnoxious 8th grader or maybe a little party prone 11th grader. Is that a fair statement?
Well, to me, I think it's more of, I'm not going to try to choose the mentee who I think has the most capability and capacity and everything. I think as the mentor, our responsibility is listen to the voice of God and the inner stirrings of our heart of who he's leading us to, and being obedient to that in the men around us, because it isn't like picking a team for dodgeball.
Yeah.
We want like God to direct us, and we know the type of people that Jesus spent his time with on earth. So would we not likewise do the same?
Yeah. Very good. That's good. Go ahead and tell us about your second.
Just the second one. If the first one was the father figure, the second one was just a wise counselor. There's a guy named Chuck, and he was a old pastor and didn't have a big platform following anything, but the words he spoke and still speak to me are like really words of life in a way that I feel like I'm experiencing what heaven on earth feels like.
Wow.
That when you speak in a way that it transcends culture and the human mind, but he's speaking eternal truths constantly. I feel really lucky that he's just been faithful, like Mike said, over the years, and soaked himself in the Word of God and the wisdom literatures of Scripture, and it just comes out of him without him trying. So I'd also say he's awesome mentor.
Let me ask you guys this question. So we'll think about the guys that are on this webinar. And my guess is they fall into a couple categories. So let's talk to a couple of these categories. One I think is maybe a guy who's felt a call or a desire to be a mentor, but hasn't known what to do or where to start. Maybe he's not even sure what he has to offer. What would you say to that guy that's, feeling enough of a stirring that he signed on to a webinar from a Facebook ad or an email that he got, but he just doesn't know sort of where to start? What would you say to that guy? Mike, we'll start with you.
I was yielding to the distinguished gentleman, Jeremy Shirky. Brett, the Holy Spirit plus our social circles will land us on a start point faster and more effective than we think. There are people in our circles that if we just say, Lord, can you help me see who's already been in my circle that would benefit from a relationship like this, or from whom I benefit, or from whom I benefit having a relationship with them. And God will bring it. God will bring in His time that person that He wants you to invest in. And also, just be open to be surprised. I'm going to tell you right now, pay attention to guys who might be acting passive aggressive towards you. And you might think that they're just in their feelings. They might be projecting something on you. And this kind of might, jump further to where we're going, but I think it relates. I had a young man in my space who was going through some stuff, working out some father issues. He's actually not my ethnicity, not my nationality, or I mean, my nationality, but not ethnicity. He's a Caucasian or Anglo, whatever's the most appropriate. He's white. And I did not realize that he was projecting father on me. He got upset with me about some things, and he was vulnerable and candid. He said, "I thought you were going to father me," and I was like, "Hey, that was in my mind. I had inclinations, but I didn't want to, be presumptuous as I was thinking about, cross-cultural interactions and all that." And so just pay attention to the people who are already around you. And I would take it a step further and don't be surprised. Don't limit who you think God might want you to mentor or invest in. That's what I would say. That's what I learned that literally within the last year.
Wow. So awareness, sort of listening to the voice of God, awareness is the first place to start. We have a technical issue with Jeremy, but luckily he is actually next door to me. So I just told him he's gonna sit here. So Jeremy, my next question is for you. So you feel like God has maybe revealed a guy to you, maybe he's come to you, maybe he's interacting negatively with you, as Mike said, and God's saying, hello, that's the guy, that's a guy that I want you to invest in. So you've got the guy, and then so how do you start? What do you do?
Yeah, I think you start by acknowledging to them that you see something in them, that you want to get to know them more. I saw someone write something earlier about getting lunch or breakfast. The power of communion over a meal or fellowship over a meal does wonders. Except, like Mike's 5,000 wings that he would eat with this guy.
See, we're friends like you.
Yeah, but I think that's true. I think sometimes you don't need to start with a plan. You just need to start. Need to have the initiative and conviction that this is something I want to do, and this is someone I want to get to know better, and I want to help. And if you have those inclinations, then what's really stopping?
That's good. All right. I think there are other guys. There may be some other guys on here who, honestly, they're a little frustrated. They feel like they've maybe tried to be a mentor, or they thought they were trying to be a mentor, and it always fizzles out, or guys just don't really respond well to them. I'll start with you on this, Jeremy. Like what would you say to a guy that just doesn't seem to be able to make it stick, and is kind of frustrated, kind of thinking maybe this isn't for me?
So not someone trying to find a mentor, but someone that's trying to find a mentor.
Right.
Okay. I would say this, right. Well, this is called man in the mirror. And so I would say, take a deep, long look in the mirror and say, am I living a life that's someone else would want to imitate? And what I've seen with mentoring specifically is guys aren't necessarily looking for sages, theological champions, CEOs of companies. All those are great. But ultimately, they're looking for guys that they can imitate their life and hopefully become when they're older. That the life they're living is inspiring to them, that they're still humble, they still love their wife, they still like their wife, in the mundane things of life. And if you are living a life like that, and you've struck out a few times, well, be like the midnight visitor in the parables, just keep knocking. just keep knocking and someone will answer. And same with the other side too. If you're looking for a mentor, now these are the type of guys I speak to all the time. You're like, I just can't find a mentor. I can't fit. I literally say that. I said, you need to be like the midnight visitor. Just keep banging the door until the door comes down. Because the guys that I know that have awesome mentors, they didn't do that their first time. They didn't, hit a home run their first time. They really, really, really wanted it. And they didn't leave. They kept banging on that door. And ultimately, it was answered.
Yeah, that's good. Going back to that, so diligence and perseverance, just keeping looking for somebody. I think the other thing, if I could add one thing, is to that guy who is wondering why he can't find somebody to mentor or doesn't seem to keep those relationships going. I think the other part is that maybe you need a mentor, like because I think we all need someone that can reflect back to us honestly about what our own life looks like. Like I mean, my wife does that for me. Probably all of our wives do that for us. They reflect back to us, when we have a weird habit or a bad attitude about something, but having guys in your life, I think that can speak truth to you as a peer. And if you're I would say, if you're a friendless guy, if you're a guy that really has no peers, I think that's actually going to be tough for you to be a decent mentor, because you're trying to offer something that you don't have yourself.
Right.
So I would just offer that up too.
Well, it's almost like the best mentors usually have the best mentors.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to ask one last question, and then we're going to take some questions, and that is, I've asked a guy to spend time with me, and he wants to spend time with me. I'm the mentor in this situation. And so, man, we got next Wednesday at 7:00. We're meeting at Panera, and I have no idea what to do. So, like, what do I do when I've been listening to the Holy Spirit, been aware of the guys around me, feel led to interact with a guy, invite him out for that first meeting, and now we're sitting at the table, Mike. Like, now what?
So it's there's no formula. I think it's honestly, be yourself plus curiosity plus humility. Just bring who you are to the table and be curious. Take interest in the person that you're pursuing. And I think that asking someone out to a meal, to go out, there's going to be enough excitement. There's going to be something that's stirring in their hearts that, oh man, this feels good that so-and-so wants to get to know me. And then I think it's that, it's either you tell them why I've asked you to come, or you just start doing it. And personality types will kind of dictate that. But I think that's basically what happens.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Jeremy, anything to add to that? Or
Yeah, I said this at the speaker series, but I think it's true. My mantra is just simple. It's listen, connect, and help.
Mm-hmm.
And just fitting in that. And like Mike said, the curiosity of listening and knowing who this person is, generally speaking, say, hey, tell me about yourself. Tell me your story. Where'd you come from? Just start at a baseline of getting to know the person, because every person wants to be known. And then as you're listening and kind of following up there, there's obviously connection points. With any two men, you can find connection points in places that you have commonality. And then you just offer general help or specific help depending on, what comes up in conversation. But I think if you're in the rhythm of actively listening, seeing where your lives kind of intertwine, and then how you can genuinely help this person, or where you can point them for help, any guy would take that.
that's good.
Can I dovetail with you, Jeremy?
Yeah.
I think as you're asking questions, an important question to ask is, hey, how does this sound to you? Is this something you're interested in? Give them a sense of ownership, a sense of buy-in, a sense of volition in the matter. And I think that again goes to the humility part. So I mean, you're taking a risk, and that's good. We have to take a risk, but the humility is to say, hey, is this something that you would like, right? And then maybe there's a dance, maybe there's a playing hard to get kind of thing, because people have been disappointed. I get these stories where the worst thing you can do is tell someone that you're going to mentor them or you're going to be there for them and not be consistent, and then they're wounded, then they don't trust, and then that's when they kind of like a wounded dog bites hard. And so until they can see that you're trustworthy, so I would say just be aware of that, but give them an opportunity to decide whether or not it's something they want.
That's good.
And can I dovetail on your dovetail?
Please, brother, please.
Sounds everywhere.
Yeah, let's get biblical. A lot of doves. I think most guys are going to come in like that they actually have been hurt in the past, that they have been, that they thought this was something that they wanted to open up and experience more, but it wasn't what they thought, or the guy was a jerk, or, it was too good to be true, or true colors revealed, or, whatever the case. If you ask any younger guy if they have any horror stories about being mentored, that could be a good softball opening question, actually.
Yeah.
Because they all have, and they're all, not all, I'm saying that generally, but very hesitant to trust, even though it's something they really desire. So I would say to be mindful of the fact that you're probably not the first person that's asked this person or been in their life to mentor them, and they probably had a lot of disappointment. So as Mike said, you just keep at it. If this is something that God has stirred your heart towards and provided you the motivation to really go for it, keep knocking on that door.
That's good. I'm going to dovetail on all the dovetails, and as the senior guy in this group of three here, I'm 55. I think I have a generation on both of you guys. And let me speak to guys my age about a mistake or two that I see. And one is, I think as you get older and you acquire more knowledge and experience, there's a paradox that is in play. And that paradox is that the more experiences and knowledge I have, the more reticent, in a real way, like the more reticent I need to be to share that. And what I mean by that is that I need to ask questions, not tell lessons, not teach lessons. And I think the older we get, the more, and I think it's an honest urge. Like, you've learned these lessons, you've gone through failures, you've had experiences, and you just want to jump in and say, well, this is what you should do. And so for me personally, what I try not to ever do is answer a question that I haven't been asked. And but rather ask a lot of questions to draw a guy out and to share where he's at. And then if he asks a question, I'm happy to answer it. And it's hard because I mean, a guy will sit in front of you that you got 20 years on, and he's going to say stupid stuff, and it's just, and a 75-year-old sitting with me is going to say, man, you're saying stupid stuff. I've been around longer than you have. But just to be patient and loving in those times, and not feel like you have to vomit every piece of knowledge that you have, or be, and because it just comes across as condescending and self-righteous and just all the things that you don't want to be, all the stereotypes that there are about older generations that I had when I was in my 20s and 30s about guys in their 50s and 60s. Now I'm that guy. And sometimes I look at myself and go, oh my goodness, now I'm that guy. And I've got to draw back and just be really willing to sacrifice my own right to speak, in a sense, my own the accumulation of knowledge and experiences that I have, and just wait until that question gets asked that I can give an answer to. So I don't know if that resonates with you guys.
Yeah,
but-
well, the mentor is modeling what it is to listen, what it is
Yeah.
to engage. And if they're tit for tat going off, I mean, it's not really showing the person what that is. And I think the wisdom and knowledge is last
Mm,
to make it last. Because anything you say will not land, go in one ear out the other over their head if they don't know that you care about them. If they don't think you're actually there because you want to like love them as a brother in Christ, and or someone to become a Christian. And until they feel the care of an older man, they're not going to listen to the wisdom that you have.
that's good. Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. Well, we do have a couple of questions. We got about 10 minutes left. And so I'm just going to remind you guys, if you have a question, you can pop over into the Q&A and ask them. And we've had a couple of questions sort of along the same line. So I'm just going to throw this out to you guys. Is there a difference? And if there is, what is the difference between mentoring and discipleship? Go, one of you.
Well, I'm going to give it to Mike because we were talking about that the other day, and Mike made some interesting points about it.
It to me, mentoring is a kind of discipleship, and discipleship, and in order to disciple somebody, you've got to mentor them. And so I use them almost interchangeably.
Hmm.
And I even throw fathering into the mix, right? And so for me, discipleship is probably going to take a more theological bent to it. You're teaching someone about the Word of God. You're, maybe there's curriculum or stuff like that. That's typically what comes to mind. But that's a very head-oriented form of discipleship. The type of discipleship that I experienced was a caught more than taught exchange. I just did life. It was the application of the Word of God to all areas of life. So I got to see decisions. I got to experience thoughts, see a person fail, see a person succeed. And that still is true in my life of a father in the faith, a mentor to me, and a man that disciples me. All three of those things are bound up in individuals who are mentors in my life. So I'll stop right there because I can
That's excellent. No, I think
go
that's
on long on that one.
What do you, another question that's come in a couple different ways, but do you see like a necessary age gap between a mentor and the guy that he's meeting with?
I don't think there's a necessary one. I mean, I think a younger guy could mentor an older guy, technically. But if we want to model it like Christ and the apostles, and this is some debate, but this is how I've come to believe it. But Mike is a biblical scholar, so he might check on it. What I can tell, Jesus was 30, and the apostles were 15, and they were attaching themselves to a rabbi. And from 15 to 18, when Jesus was 30 to 33, they were with them for 3 years, and he was teaching them. And there was an age gap there that would be more multiplied today in our day and age. But I do think there is something to say, I know what you're going through because I've been through it, and now I'm on the other side and I have perspective, and that gives me wisdom beyond just knowledge. And so I do think, while it's not necessary, I think it's highly beneficial.
Yeah, I'm careful to be too rigid because I am a pastor of almost 40, and I have people who are older than me that look up to me. And that's, of course, that's by office, right? So that's because of the office that I hold. There are things that are granted to you. But then I think there's another factor, not saying that this is actually true of the men, but generally speaking, I think sometimes there's emotional age.
Mhm.
There are men we probably know in our lives who are older men, but we realize that we're actually emotionally older than them. So there are those dynamics. But I think ordinarily, uh, age, and then the next thing I would say is pretty much maybe age, office, life experience. I put it in that order as sort of the ordinary course of what would produce the most healthy situation for mentoring. But I'm like Jeremy, I'm careful not to be too rigid on that.
Yeah, so maybe I may have sabotaged the question with the word necessary, but likely it's an older guy and a younger guy, and certainly it's a sort of a more spiritually mature guy and
Yeah,
a spiritually mature guy.
sure. Yeah, there's yeah.
But that's different than like having like brothers. Like I've got some guys, and you guys do too, in my life that are brothers. We walk through life together. We certainly challenge each other and tell each other when we're being, dumb. But that's a different relationship than the relationship with a spiritual father or a mentor, which I feel like is a more, like you said, wisdom, knowledge, experience as the base that hopefully has a lot of love, curiosity, and compassion on top of that. That's the first thing you see, but that's sort of the base of it.
It's almost like your brothers are in the trenches, right? In the trench with you in your life. And someone who's mentoring you is a few trenches ahead.
Mhm.
That's good.
They remember that, but they've also made it the next few. And so you want to like ask them and you want them to help you figure out how to be in this.
That's good.
Mhm.
What about the idea of mentoring? Can you mentor more than one guy at once? Mike, your story seemed to have a little bit of that in it, where there's maybe a mentor, spiritual father with multiple spiritual sons, multiple mentees. What is that? What do you guys think about that? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can. I think you have to be wise about it. You've got to evaluate how much capacity you have to actually be what those guys need you to be. And it changes as the seasons go on, is what I've come to understand. And that's some of where I've made mistakes. Maybe coming on too strong, giving a guy advice or directing him almost, where he wants some room to just interact with what I said to him maybe a year or two before and figure things out for himself. And there's got to be that dance where I just say, okay, we've had this relationship. I trust you, and you move on, and what you're doing could work, it could not, but and then that frees you up. So at least in my experience, the amount of time that I have to invest in certain things changes as the mentoring relationship matures. So I'm not going to talk to a guy that's already married now and he has 2 kids the same way I did when he was in the middle of college. He's learned some things, and now the type of questions he's asking me are different than he did then.
Yeah.
It's not, hey, what do I do to try to find a wife? It's now, how do I be faithful and live out my calling as a husband to this wife that the Lord gave me, right? And so, yeah. And so I mentor closely right now 3 guys. Three guys have a strong amount of my time and access to me. And they're not all local. And there are some more in the making, but again, I pray about that and I evaluate my capacity to be faithful to our arrangement, our relationship.
Awesome. I'll ask one more, which is we talked about sort of the start of that relationship and being curious, getting to know them, getting to understand their story, listening to their problems. Do you see a time in that relationship where you might bring in some outside resources like a book or a curriculum, and what would prompt that if you were to do that?
So, I'd like to speak to that. I think absolutely. A problem I see with mentoring is we have predetermined curriculum and books that we want to use without knowing what the mentee needs.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time we set up a system, and then through that system, we're going to get to know the mentee as well. But we're going in a direction that we don't know what they need. I see churches do this. I see people do this individually. Instead of saying, hey, let me get to know you, let's kind of see where you are and let's determine now, what do you need, and base the curriculum on that, which is a much healthier approach, because absolutely, like, men need order. When our lives are in chaos, and they are in different ways in different areas, we need other men to help us order our lives. And I think that's obviously a great way to do that is through curriculums and books and studies and all that. But to determine what that is before you even know the person seems to be throwing spaghetti on the wall. So I would just say, yes, ultimately you want to help them advance and grow and learn, but try and figure out in what ways would be most beneficial for them to do that before choosing that stuff.
Awesome. Well, guys, we are at the end of our hour, and so I know we still have a few questions. We'll try to grab these questions and answer them on Man in the Mirror's Facebook page. I do want to just give you a couple quick resources if you're on this call that you can take advantage of. First of all, the Man in the Mirror website, maninthemirror.org, has tons of articles and video Bible studies and resources that you can access. The vast majority of it is free. And we just want to help you as you're interacting with guys around you. If you're a church leader, we also have leadership consulting that we do through our area directors. And so if you're in a church, these guys are in the U.S. and also in Southeast Asia. We have a group of guys there under the leadership of Robert Lim with MIM Asia. If you're a church and you want somebody to come in and help you, we would love to walk alongside you in that. And so you can go to maninthemirror.org and look for area directors, search for an area director near you. There's also actually a form at the very top of our website that's called a ministry consultation form. You can ask us any question on that form, and we'll give you a call back or email you back and see how we can come alongside you and help you. Finally, I will just say this: there's a good chance of a group this size. We got over 100 guys on the Zoom webinar, and I don't know how many guys are on the Facebook Live, but there's probably a guy out there that may have thought of actually getting into doing men's discipleship as a career. And when I just talked about being a leadership consultant for churches, if that sort of piqued your interest a little bit, we'd love to talk to you a little bit more about the opportunities that we have here at Man in the Mirror. We have guys that operate all over the country as sort of as missionaries to local churches, and really help them, come alongside them as they seek to reach and disciple men, including helping churches train up mentors, guys that are prepared to go and reach the guys that are behind them on their spiritual journey and walk alongside them. So just go to our website and you can find all that information there, and we'd love to talk to you more about that. So Mike Aitchison, thank you so much. Jeremy Shirky, thank you so much. By the way, between these two guys, they have 8 kids. I forgot to mention that about Jeremy. So Mike's got 4 girls. Jeremy's got 3 boys and a girl. And so a lot of fathering obviously is going to come through, but what a great model it is. God the Father gives us that model from the very start.
If anyone on this call can mentor us with 4-kid life,
Yeah,
please, we'll send our emails, help us.
They need you, trust me. All right, guys. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned. We'll have more webinars in the future. Thank you again to Pat Leopold for his great work in putting this webinar together. Mike and Jeremy, thank you once again for coming on with us. And guys, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.